Remind people what goes on at Scott.
Scott is the headquarters for our command, and Air Force reorganized itself several years ago, and so all of the airborne logistics that is covered, all of the flights into and out of the Middle East, all of the flights into all of the disaster flights, relief flights, when we were flying into, we fly to Pakistan, when we're dealing with the tsunami relief, all of those flights were scheduled out of Scott Air Force Base. Scott is a major logistics hub for the United States military. It's a joint
United States
command.
Transportation Command.
Yeah, Transcom is there. We have members of the Air Force, Navy, Army. Everybody is there because logistics is critical for the military to perform its function, and that's the role of Scott.
Mm-hmm. And the old MAC, which is now renamed AMC, is also out of there.
Former Military Airlift Command, it became, what used to be the Military Air Transport Service became Military Airlift Command, now it's all part of Transcom. So it really does provide that global outreach. And I think sometimes we fail to realize the importance of Scott. We view it as just as a base, but it has a global outreach and it does have a global mission.
And military airlift hospital ships are how do I put this? From there's a headquarters where they send airplanes out to pick up patients and move them around the military system to get them to various hospitals as well.
That is correct.
I forget the name of that command.
Initially they were flying some C-9 Nightingale aircraft, but all of the coordination for flying wounded out, for moving individuals that need to be transported from the various hospitals is handled through Scott Air Force Base. We have an entire network of military hospitals. Each hospital, whether it's Army, Navy, Air Force, has specialties. And as the servicemen need specific types of care, they're flown from hospital to hospital by the United States Air Force. All of that is taken care of by Transcom.
So Scott's a big deal, even though most St. Louisans probably just know the name.
That's right. Scott has a profound impact on our ability to maintain our national security and to maintain our global presence. Without Scott, our military would not be able to function on a global nature.
Right, and so putting the runway in was part of maintaining that in Southern Illinois, maintaining the 14,000 plus jobs that are located because of Scott in this region.
That's correct.
Does that have a benefit to St. Louis, by the way?
I believe it does, because not only do we have the jobs at Scott, but they're the spinoff jobs. And at the same time, we are a region. I've traveled extensively with St. Louis RCGA, and one of the things when we've gone on the leadership trips, we look at regional economy. And it's really critical that the entire region have a strong economic base. So the fact that Scott is here with its 14,000 jobs, it keeps, the Southwestern Illinois region, it's one factor in keeping us strong, and a strong Southwestern Illinois contributes to the greater St. Louis metropolitan area.
Okay, so now you've developed a report already? You've been working on it since '09, and do you have a report that's about to be published, or?
We have a report that we have delivered to the leadership team that we're working with. We're in the process now of looking at implementation strategies. One thing that we discovered, and I might talk just a little bit about that, is that we spent time running focus groups all over the seven county area. We did personal interviews with a number of key private sector and public sector leaders. We conducted web-based interviews. Everything that we did was to try and find out, what do people think about the region? And we discovered a couple of things. Number one is that the region does not seem, this is Southwestern Illinois, does not seem to have a brand or an identity that we can market. And one of the reasons we're dealing with Vision 2020 is to find out if we need to brand ourselves so that we can position ourselves for economic growth in the future. Otherwise, we just become an area that's across the river from the city of St. Louis.
Do you mean like
the
term Silicon Valley?
Silicon Valley. We've tried a number of brands, East County, things like that really haven't struck. The important thing is that we need to brand ourselves so that we have an identity and we can govern what our future is going to be. Going along with that, we are a very decentralized region. There are over 100 municipalities in the seven county area. Mm-hmm. And there's no compelling desire for us to consolidate, and our report does not recommend consolidation because we grew in order to be accountable. All the small governments are there. But at the same time, people are saying, you know, we need some kind of regional economic voice for our region. Somebody that speaks for us. Not a new level of government, but somebody that can talk with the private sector, somebody that can market us on a global nature. Because we are now heavily involved in a global economy. Years ago, we manufactured and distributed our goods to the central United States and to the coasts. That has now changed, because our manufacturing has now moved to Asia.
Remind people who have forgotten or too young to remember the variety of products that used to be manufactured up and down the Mississippi River on the Illinois side.
Oh, the Illinois side was and still is to a degree the industrial heartland of the greater St. Louis area. We manufactured glass, we manufactured steel, we manufactured all kinds of things with the rail industry. It was a major manufacturing area, and gradually those jobs began to evaporate as investment moved either to the southern states or investment began to move offshore.
Mm-hmm. And so does much of that manufacturing capability still exist today? I mean, you said that there is some, but one of
the strengths that we have is our workforce. And what we discovered is that if you look at where can we go as a region, one term that began to emerge is something we call the 4 R's: rivers, rail, runway, and roads. Now, let me talk about river. Because we know that China is now the world's second largest economy. We know that our economic well-being is going to be tied to that large economy. People may not be aware of the fact that Panama looked at the global situation and they realized their canal was going to become irrelevant to global trade because it was too small. So Panama is now in the process of constructing a larger second Panama Canal, and that canal will come online in 2014 because the cargo ships leaving Asia are too big to traverse the existing canal.
Right.
The ports
that was built at the beginning of the 20th century. Things have changed.
Things have changed. The locking mechanism. It's a slow process to move freight from the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean and to move it back and forth. Panama realized this, and so they're now building a new Panama Canal. People can go on the website and look it up, and all the information's there about how wide it will be. Now, what that means for Panama is they will remain relevant to global trade, and that's important for us because as the ports on the western United States are at capacity, freight will traverse the Panama Canal, and it will go to several places. Number one, it may go to Houston. Number two, it may go to New Orleans. Number three, it may circle Florida and go to Savannah, Georgia. So our goal, I know that the Port of New Orleans is making a major play, a major bid to become a landing port for much of this trade. And we are positioned, if we take advantage of it, to build on that trade relationship with East Asia through the Mississippi River. We are we always talk about Russia as always looking for a warm water port in the old days. We are the warm water port on the Mississippi River. We don't freeze. We have port facilities, the Tri-City Port Network. We have port facilities on the Kaskaskia River. And if we begin to build and expand on those, that requires private sector investment.
Yes.
Then we can bring freight up the Mississippi River, and it will strengthen our capability to compete globally. We can then manufacture, send things downriver and around the world. Mm-hmm. That is the key. And the key for us is to be able to have the kind of vision that Panama had, saying, wait a minute, we don't want to be left behind. We want to integrate ourselves into global trade. This is what Kansas City has done. If you heard about KC1 or Smartport over in Kansas City, they are touting their rail relationships with Mexico. They're touting their rail relationships with the Port of Houston. And so they're saying, we are here, but we're a little farther east than Kansas City. We have 5 Class 1 railroads that converge here. We have the Terminal Railroad Association. We have the ports. We have the rail. We have, in Southwestern Illinois, we have 3 airports. We have the ability, if we choose to exercise it. And that's what Vision 2020 is about.
About 3 minutes left here, a little more than that. Right there, you've just identified, if, the big if we have the vision, if we have the push to actually make this happen. You deal with, I imagine, not only you're dealing with the political community, but you're also dealing with the real business community. Where are they on this in short order? Like I said, we got like about 3 minutes here.
I think we're in a very conservative time in terms of investment. And I think the challenge for us, we are funded by the public sector, is to come up with strategies that we can elicit private sector investment. We can be able to demonstrate the return on investment for these kinds of activities. We have great capacities. Energy is a cluster that we can develop. We have refining capabilities for oil. We have ethanol. We have a strong agricultural base to be able to supply those plants. So the key for us, and this is a great challenge for us, is to demonstrate to the private sector that there is a significant return on their capital investment in our region. And that's what Vision 2020 is really about.
Mm-hmm. Is the state of Illinois going to be doing something about the perception that to outsiders that Illinois is a high tax area, or that it is over unionized and therefore their costs of doing business in this area are higher than they would be in some other part of the United States?
The tax structure for Illinois remains a challenge. I mean, there's no doubt about it, because the southern states have a lower tax structure. The southern states are in a position to compete with us, Mexico, China. So one of the issues for us is to be able to find a mechanism to allow investment that is not thwarted, negated by the tax policy of the state of Illinois. And that's an issue for us, mm-hmm. and we have to find a mechanism for that.
Mm-hmm. Dave Sinclair told me once that he felt that you can't be hiring people and paying them $8, $9 an hour and expect them to go out and buy one of his cars, because that's just not enough money to make. So we need to find those kind of high value, high wealth creating positions. I mean, that's what our industries need to be. It's not like making straw hats that sell for $1. We need to be making things that people are willing to trade their wealth for. And hopefully that is what the business community is understanding and aiming towards.
That is the key, because if we go to minimum salary jobs, minimum wage jobs, people cannot afford to buy homes, they cannot afford to buy cars, they cannot afford to send their kids to college. So we have to have wealth creating kinds of jobs. We have to follow the policy of Henry Ford. He says, I want to pay my workers a wage so they can buy my car. And he was a revolutionary. And so our goal is to work with the private sector so you can invest here, have a high ROI. Our goal also involved working with our state legislative delegation to say, look, we have to follow reasonable tax policies that will not drive business away from our state.
Well, unfortunately, our time on television goes by very fast. You have really put out a mouthful of information. I hope that people listened very closely to what you had to say. I thank you very much for being with us today. And to my audience, I've been speaking with T.R. Carr. He's a professor at SIU and has been in charge of the Vision 2020 program. See you next Monday. Thank you.